There's breaking news we're following right now. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation has made another arrest in the case of Ahmaud Arbery, a young African-American man who was shot and killed while on a jog earlier this year. The fatal shooting was captured on camera and has generated outrage across the country. CNN's Martin Savage is joining us right now. Martin, what are you learning?
Well, if you know, it was that video that changed the whole trajectory of this investigation. As you'll remember, for 2 months, the case was stagnant, and then that shocking video was released. It was William Roddy Bryan, the man who took that video, and he's the man who's now been taken into custody today, exactly 2 weeks from the time that you had Gregory and Travis McMichael that were taken into arrest. Now, the GBI is announcing that Bryan has been taken into custody. He is charged with felony murder. That is the same charge that Travis and Gregory received, but also he's been charged with criminal attempt to commit false imprisonment. There had been a lot of consternation by many here who believed that Bryan, in addition to taking that video, had also apparently participated in trying to detain Arbery on that terrible day. And now authorities have moved on that. His attorney has always maintained that no, Arbery was just a bystander who happened to be a witness and captured it on his phone. And as we all know, it was that video that changed everything in this case, Wolf. But now he is in custody and in the same jail as the McMichaels. Wolf?
Yeah, you know, we're just getting a statement in, Martin, from the attorneys for the mother and father of Ahmaud Arbery. And let me read it to our viewers. The family of Ahmaud Arbery was relieved to learn that the Georgia Bureau of Investigation has today taken William Roddy Bryan into custody. We called for his arrest from the very beginning of this process. His involvement in the murder of Mr. Arbery was obvious to us and to many around the country. And after their thorough investigation, it was clear the GBI as well. The family of Mr. Arbery is thankful for the diligence of the GBI and the way in which they tirelessly pursued the evidence in this case. We want anyone who participated in the murder of Mr. Arbery to be held accountable. A very strong statement from the family, Martin.
It is indeed, and they're right. This is something that they have been calling for from the very beginning. It's also been something that the supporters of the Arbery family have been asking for. All the protests that have been held have spoken to this very fact that they believe that Bryan was not just an innocent witness here, that he somehow was involved. Remember, he was named in 2 police reports, one of them in which McMichael himself, Gregory McMichael, stated that Roddy attempted to try to use his vehicle to block Ahmaud Arbery on that day. There was another report from authorities that suggested as well that he was a participant. It's interesting, there was a raid that was conducted, a search warrant carried out on the McMichaels' home. That was on Tuesday of this week. We don't know what was found, but you have to wonder, could anything else found in their home have made them decide what to do with Bryan?
Very interesting. Martin Savage has been doing excellent reporting on this for us. Martin, thank you very much. I want to bring in Laura Coates, our legal analyst, who's also been doing extensive analysis and reporting on this. What's your reaction, Laura, when you heard of this dramatic development?
This is extraordinarily striking, Wolf, because, you know, felony murder is what he is being charged with. And that is important here because most people think to themselves, if you're not the one who actually fired the gun, then there would not be criminal liability. But felony murder is a doctrine that essentially says if you participated in the crime, if you were somebody who advised or encouraged or in some way helped another person commit a crime, even if nobody intended to actually kill somebody, the fact that you were engaged in a felony or a crime and there was a foreseeable risk that somebody could be harmed, you can be liable. And so what we're seeing here is a compilation, Wolf, not only what Martin's talking about, but remember, this is about how that video that was captured, that very tragic death of Ahmaud Arbery, was actually more than, 4 minutes long. And people kept wondering, how is it that this man, William Roddy Bryan, was in a position to have his camera ready at just the right time and capture this moment? Was he somebody who participated? Did he actually cut off Ahmaud Arbery with his own car to try to keep him in one position to have this, what people are calling an ambush? That's what was being looked at. And it seems that at least the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, who recall, Wolf, only took 2 days to decide that arrest was necessary of these 2 men, Mr. McMichael, Travis, and Gregory, have now found that look, there is reason to believe that at least there are allegations that can be supported that he participated in this crime and was not simply an innocent bystander. But of course, his attorneys will obviously argue that as a defense of felony murder, that he was simply in the right place for filming, but at the wrong time and was innocent.
And as you point out, William Bryan, who was just arrested, charged with felony murder, he's the one who filmed that incident. We've all seen the video by now. And at one point, he got into his car to follow Arbery. So what do you make of the way this all has unfolded over these past several days so dramatically and relatively quickly, even though there were, a couple of months between the time of the shooting and the time of the arrests of the father and son and now Brian?
Well, this tells you the accelerated pace at which they were able to determine that there was probable cause to make these arrests. Imagine the comparison when it took more than 80 days for the initial two, the father and son, Gregory McMichael and Travis McMichael, to even be arrested. If they were able to have all of this evidence closer in time to the actual killing of Ahmaud Arbery, one would believe you'd be able to draw the same conclusions even closer to the crime. So it tells you that there is the need for the Department of Justice, at least in part, Wolf, to review the prosecutorial conduct in this case to assess whether there was any bias and undue influence exerted to put a thumb on the scales of justice in favor of the McMichaels, in favor of William Bryan, and against the best interest of the family of Ahmaud Arbery. It'll all be crucial to look at this holistically. But what is true here is that they were not buying, for whatever reason, the GBI and the prosecutor now handling the case, that this was pure coincidence, that Roddy Bryan purely coincidentally was in the area at this time. And instead, it speaks to the fact that they think, rather than coincidence, this was someone who was complicit in the crime. And like Martin Savage reported, you have to wonder, this coming so closely at the heels of having them search the homes of the McMichaels, what information did they glean? And did that even more so accelerate the decision to arrest Roddy Bryan?
Very interesting. And as you point out, there are calls now on the Justice Department here in Washington to get involved in this case. Would you expect the Attorney General, Bill Barr, to take any action?
Well, this would come down fundamentally to two factors. Number one, it depends on what type of crime they are investigating, whether it's the Civil Rights Division looking at perhaps a hate crime. Remember, Georgia does not have a statute for hate crime prevention. Is there evidence to suggest that there is a racial motivation or a profiling that led to the death of Ahmaud Arbery? Many would speculate that is indeed the case, but it's a hard case to prove without a sort of a manifesto like we've had in the Dylann Roof cases and other acts that have happened. But the other issue is this is a matter of investigating the prosecutors in this case. And when you're talking about potentially prosecutorial misconduct in the handling of the case, in the investigation, or in a way that was contrary to the rights of people to be able to have justice served or at least, sought after, that will be an interesting thing to discuss about whether the Justice Department, as I knew it, as a civil rights attorney that I was for the Justice Department, would have looked at a case like this and said, if there was a concerted effort by multiple prosecutors to try to cover up a crime of a former, colleague, if that's what happened, this is ripe for Justice Department review, and law enforcement out there in the world should be particularly vexed by any instance of a citizen, a civilian, trying to usurp the role of them, as opposed to calling 911 and getting properly trained police officers in the area to actually inquire and give the runner, the jogger, Ahmaud Arbery, the human being, the benefit of the doubt, the presumption of innocence, and at least the dignity of an investigation.